Evening. On behalf of NYIT's president, Dr. Edward Giuliano, the administration, faculty, and students of NYIT, it is an absolute pleasure and honor to introduce to you tonight's speaker, NYIT alumna, Dr. Patricia Galloway. Tonight's event marks the launch of the School of Engineering and Computing Sciences 21st-Century Leaders Speaker Series. We are also pleased to have with us, and in the first row, one of the speakers in the series, Dr. Greg Olson. Dr. Patricia Galloway is the Chief Executive Officer of Pegasus Global Holdings, Inc., an international management consulting firm. A leader in the field of engineering and construction with over 30 years of experience, Dr. Galloway is recognized globally for her expertise in project and program management, risk management, corporate governance, and standard of care. She is regularly consulted by private and public companies, international investment banks, the media, including National Geographic, NPR, where I heard her, universities, and professional societies for her expertise. Dr. Galloway has crisscrossed the globe with a PhD from Japan, traveling to over 100 countries and working on numerous US-based and international infrastructure projects, including mega projects with capital investment of $1 billion or more. Dr. Galloway also serves as an arbitrator with the American Arbitration Association, AAA. She is a member of its board of directors and serves on its commercial, large complex case, construction, and ICDR panels. She also belongs to the 24-member National Science Board, which oversees the US government's National Science Foundation. When I visited the National Science Foundation last August, time at which Dr. Galloway was its vice chair, her photo was on the wall of every office at NSF. Yes, yes. Dr. Galloway was the first female president of the American Society of Civil Engineers, ASCE, in its 150-year-plus history. She holds a bachelor's degree in civil engineering from Purdue University, and Dr. Galloway graduated summa cum laude in 1984 with an executive M.B.A. from NYIT. Today marks her return to campus after 26 years. She reminisced today over lunch about the hours spent driving from her residence in Princeton, New Jersey, to our campus in Old Westbury every Saturday for hours, but I must add, in her Porsche. She has class. Dr. Galloway is an inspiration to all of us through her energy. I mean, you should have heard her at lunch, 2 hours nonstop, and leadership in the US and globally. She is a champion of engineering education and the education of females and minorities in particular. On the Engineer Girl Inc. webpage, you will see a quote by her: "Never give up, and never let anyone tell you that you don't have the background or experience." And today at lunch, she taught our students a lesson to never be afraid. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Patricia Galloway.
So Nada, I should hire you as my public relations officer. That was wonderful. Thank you very much. It's just an honor to be here, and it's great to be back in the Big Apple. I lived in Princeton and I worked in Manhattan for several years, and I was always told when I was offered the opportunity to work in Manhattan that if you could make it in New York, you could make it anywhere. So now I'm the anywhere, Cle Elum, Washington. When everybody goes, "Where is Cle Elum, Washington?" and I say, "The anywhere." Little thing hard for them to get to understand, but it is a dream that I worked very hard to get, and a dream that all of you have, not the dream to be in Cle Elum, but a dream to be successful. Each of you are here tonight because there must have been an interest in the topic of leadership. Either you want to improve your leadership skills and to do something more, or you are inspiring to be a leader and might want to know how. So I'm hoping that tonight I can impart a little bit of my experience with you in the next several minutes, and that you can take home at least one thing that you can employ to improve your skills of becoming or being a leader. Leadership is something that all of us should know a lot about today, after yesterday. Leaders are people who inspire others to follow them, and people who can inspire with a vision that everyone has the same mission and goals in mind to complete that objective. When leaders fail to communicate this, people will stop following and they will retract. And we've learned some important lessons over the last several months, and especially in the last 24 hours. And I'm not talking about Republicans and Democrats. I'm not talking about parties. I am talking about lessons in leadership that every one of you tonight should try to think about what has happened and try to recognize what we need to do differently if we are truly leading. So I want to start back with just a little bit of my own personal experience, because I think it's apropos as to the statement of why never let anybody tell you that you can't do something or that it can't be done. And that happens back in my personal childhood. I am definitely a liberal arts person. I had no math, no physics, and no chemistry in high school at all. I was a dancer. I was into art. I was on the debate team. I loved the cinema. I loved the drama of Shakespeare. I absolutely loved to be creative. I was an outdoors person. I was in Girl Scouts. I was a backpacker. Everything that people think about engineers just didn't occur to them that would be me, including me. I had no idea what engineers were. I thought they were people that drove trains. I come from a very, very poor background. My father had died when I was 14 months old. My mother was now a single mother. I had no brothers. I had no sisters. My dad's side of the family was from Hazard, Kentucky. They worked in the railroad or they worked in the coal mines. My mother's side of the family didn't even graduate from high school. And so there wasn't a lot of, quote, role models in my family as to engineering. As I said, the railroad was about the closest I could get to what an engineer was. But my mother was quite an inspiration to me, and I became my mother's project, literally. So when I would come home at night, we had to do more homework, because she thought I needed to learn the languages and how to speed read and how to do all these other things that someday told me I would look back and thank her. It took me several years to realize I really did want to thank her for all of this, but I eventually realized the benefits. But I was always active in school activities. As I said, I tried everything. I mean, I failed miserably at piano, even though I took 9 years of it. And I knew I wasn't going to be successful at that when I went to get on stage and do the recital in front of 500 people in the auditorium at Transylvania University, and got to the third note and went, yeah, for my tutor to go, I think it might be D minor you're looking for, or something. I don't know, it's probably the wrong musical note, but I realized I wasn't cut out to be a musician. However, what I did realize is that I was open to anything. And so one day, when I'm a junior in high school, and we had career day, I'm sure a lot of you have gone through career days, and I, of course, was not wanting to go because the topic was engineering, which, as I said, I had no idea what that meant, but I just knew I didn't want to be an engineer. I wanted to be either a interpreter for the United Nations. I was into languages. I had 6 years of Spanish. I had 2 years of a dead language, Latin, and I was getting ready to take French. Or an interior designer. I might actually be able to do art and make some money at it. So that was an idea. Or this was back, and a lot of you won't remember, but there was this little intrigue investigation with a person named Patty Hearst, who had been the daughter of a great empire and got mixed up in this little hostage deal and became one of them. It's a big thing. But anyway, I thought I wanted to be a criminal lawyer into the minds of what motivated someone to do what they may have not or may have done. Not quite engineering. Any three of those relate to engineering? But the professor that day from the University of Kentucky put these beautiful renderings up on the wall. And of course, I used to draw, and I drew buildings. And I sat there and I went, wow, there's a career where I could use what I like to do. Of course, a little white lie, really structural engineers don't draw renderings of buildings. Architects do that, but that's okay. He got my attention. And I raised my hand and I said, do civil engineers do that? And he said, oh, yes, and we need young ladies into the profession. And I was sold. I thought, wow, I can actually do something I like to do and maybe make some money at it. So I went home and I said, Mom, I've changed my mind. No lawyers, no interior designers, and no interpreters. I want to be a civil engineer. And my mother just looked at me and went, oh, well, that's nice. You can do anything you want to do. I knew she didn't have a clue what I had just said, but she was positive. Positive direction. And now my journey for the rest of my life began. I went to my guidance counselor the next morning. I said, I've changed my mind. Don't want to be an interpreter. Don't want to be a designer. Don't want to be a lawyer. I want to be a civil engineer. And he looked at me and said, that's a bad idea. Really? You don't have the aptitude to be an engineer. Really? I was a straight A student. No, you scored real low on your aptitude for engineering. That's a bad idea. I thought guidance counselors were supposed to be uplifting and were supposed to be encouraging to their students. So I went to my math teacher, a woman, and I said, Mrs. Caldwell, there are certain people I never forget. Mrs. Caldwell, I've changed my mind, blah, blah, blah. I went through the same story. I want to be an engineer. That's a really bad idea. Really? Now, why do you think it's a bad idea? I'm a straight A student in math class. Because you'll flunk out. You have never had calculus, you've never had physics, you've never had chemistry. They will eat you alive and you will flunk out. Well, there's two encouraging statements, but it was the last one that solidified my career. I went home to my grandparents and my grandmother, who I adored. I told her the same story and said I wanted to be a civil engineer. And her reaction was, isn't that a man's job? That did it. I was going to be the best civil engineer that I possibly could. And so I began my journey. And my journey through life has been very, very interesting one, and one that I would like to tell you that I have combined that creative part of my life can try to blend my left brain and right brain together, something I think all of us should try to do more often. And through that, and many of the students got to hear a little bit about my 4 C's today, and that's what I want to try to take all of you as an audience down, and maybe I'll hopefully give a little bit of different insights and imparts today. And that is my path to success in a global economy requires a leader to really have 4 qualities, in my view, 4 real skill qualities. And the first of those is credentialing. And what do I mean by credentialing? Everybody thinks, well, that's degrees. Well, it is degrees, but it's not all degrees. Credentialing, I will transcend that, means lifelong learning. We should never stop learning. And why is that? because you can already see that technology is changing as we sit here every nanosecond. Something new has been developed. And I had to remind a few of the students today when they sort of asked me, well, did you sort of like go online and take a test or something? And I went, online? I said, you know, the PC wasn't even available until 1981. And then it looked like a suitcase. I graduated from here in '84. There wasn't, quote, online courses available. Credentialing is remembering that what we learn today is probably obsolete next week in some cases. Lifelong learning is about keeping your mind alive, keeping your mind alert. Because the mind, in my view, through all my experience, is those who continue to challenge their mind and those that continue to try to learn and find new discoveries and new things are the ones who truly live the longest. If you research it and you look at people that are our new centenarians, and you look at their life and what they've done, some of it probably has to do, of course, that they're not eating Big Macs every day, and that they probably exercise and have some physical qualities, but they are very alert people. They read, they gather information, they study. A lot are people in Asia who have a philosophy attitude, that they are very, very much into really reading, the meditation, the looking forward, to always being inquisitive. So credentialing, I transcend that back to it is about another degree. It is about continued degrees. It is about continued certifications. It is about publication. It is about being a member of organizations. Why? Because every one of those allows you to keep on learning. And it's not just about your credentials, but anything that you do is always going to make whoever you work for look good too. And when you can make who you work for look good, it's a two-way street, and it has benefits both ways. The more you make your employer look good, the more your employer is going to make sure you have those opportunities to keep doing that. Keep sending you to speak, keep encouraging you to write, keep letting you do the very things that you want to do. And so it becomes a little bit of a give and take scenario, and recognizing that, yeah, it may take some of your personal time to do this, but the benefits will absolutely reap themselves miles over. And so leaders do this. Leaders are always trying to improve themselves however they can. Now that credentialing, though, leads itself to another pathway segment, and that is the commitment. Now think about what I've just said. If lifelong learning is you want to keep doing these things, well, the fact is there's 24 hours a day. And the fact is you can't do everything. And good leaders know when to say no. And good leaders also recognize that they have to finish what they start, and that they have to do everything they do well. Winners want to win. Leaders like to win. And good leaders set the pathway for others to make sure they can win, whatever that win may be. Mediocrity never made leaders. And so that commitment is for you to realize as an individual what it is that you physically can do, realistically. You're here because you want to learn about leadership. That probably puts you close to the type A personality, or at least leaning towards a type A personality. And as a type A personality, you know that every time someone gives you an opportunity to do something, you don't want to say no, because you're so excited you got the opportunity. but you are only physically capable of doing so much if you plan on doing it well. And the one thing that is very important to recognize is that the first time you do something wrong or fail or do not complete something or fail to deliver on a promise that you've made to somebody, despite the fact that you're 99.9% perfect in everything else you do, that person will only remember that 0.1% that you failed to complete or failed to deliver or failed to act upon. And regaining trust is a very difficult thing to do. A leader must inspire. A leader has to have a vision and a strategy. A leader has to reward, but a leader also has to have trust. And when you lose trust in another individual, I have to tell you, it is extremely, extremely difficult to regain that trust and to ever want to follow that person again. It's very important in what you do. And from a business standpoint, because we have a very mixed room in here, the whole Sarbanes-Oxley aspect has a lot to do with being honest and truthful and transparent and forthright. And so commitment comes to those very elements of being honest, truthful, forthright, very transparent, and being able for someone, if you tell them something or give them something, that they can rely on that information and know it to be true. And the first time they find out it is not, they will never want to come to you again. So, very important lessons to learn on this whole commitment. Finish things. You may get tired. You may feel tired. You know, all the Red Bulls you drink aren't going to necessarily keep you going. At some point, you get tired and you collapse. However, remember that life is a journey, and that while unfortunately life may have an end, I always like to tell people, no, really it doesn't. Because what you do in life, you will hope will carry on somehow to another generation. And if you think of life that way, then you have a firm commitment for the rest of your life to remember that everything you do needs to be finished, and what you can't finish, and the only reason you can't finish it is because you're no longer around to finish it, but you've left a pathway for someone else to be able to finish your work. Now, how do you do all of this? Well, the third thing then for pathways to success is to be able to communicate. Because if you have credentialed yourself, you may have written tremendously, you may have published, you may have done all these wonderful things, but if you cannot effectively communicate your message, it's all for naught. So this is where I give a little levity in the program. So, and some of you heard this today, so don't raise your hand if you were here at lunch today. And I apologize for telling jokes twice, but I'm an engineer, so I apologize for the non-engineers in the room, but you can probably portray it into something else. So the difference, anybody know the difference between an extroverted engineer and an introverted engineer? So the introverted engineer looks at their shoes when they talk to you. An extroverted engineer looks at your shoes when they talk to you. Sick joke, I know, I'm sorry. But engineers, I fail to recognize how they ever have learned to even exist because they can't communicate. And it happened today. It's true for the medical field. It's true for any technical field. When I walked in to the computer room today, the gentleman was explaining the experiment. And I have to tell you, there were so many acronyms and so many scientific words used in a 2-sentence, less than 30-second phrase. I just went, ah, that's nice. I I have no idea what he said. I still don't know what he said because I didn't understand any of the words, and I'm not a computer engineer, I'm a civil engineer, so I didn't understand any of the phraseology either. So unfortunately, it was a great presentation. Unfortunately, I will not remember it because I have no idea what he said. So you, in whatever you do, must recognize that when you're talking to a lay person, and you know there's a misperception of what lay means. A lay person, all that means is the person that you're talking to does not have the same expertise that you have. For instance, if a doctor is talking to me, I am a lay person. I'm still a professional. I still consider myself fairly intelligent. But if a doctor now starts using their terminology to explain something to me, I'm not going to understand it. So there is a little trick here on the communication. Does everyone know the paper USA Today? Anybody familiar with that little newspaper? And we all sort of laugh at it because we think, oh, you know, there's not much news there, and it's, you know, just little snippets and sound bites. And if you really want to read something good, you go to the Wall Street Journal or the Financial Times or something like that. But the lesson learned here is the majority of the population actually reads better and absorbs information on a 5th grade level. USA Today is written on a 5th grade level. If you are able to communicate whatever it is that you do to a lay person in a USA Today style, they will get it. They will completely understand it. So while that, you know, it's amazing the people I meet that try to impress me with how much they know. And they do so by the way they dress, they do so by the way they talk, and the phraseology that they do. And the interesting factor is that the people that don't get that 5th grade USA Today communication, I walk away less impressed than I was before I even knew the person, because they failed to communicate. And oral communication is only one important aspect. Another important aspect about communication is listening. We all sort of sometimes fail to recognize that one of the key aspects of communication is listening. If I am trying to work for a client, if I don't truly understand the needs of my client and truly don't listen to what my client wants, then I will fail at delivering my product. We are all too eager to try to impress somebody. We are all too eager to want to teach somebody what we know, and therefore we start talking before someone's even finished. Or before the client can speak, we tell them, this is what you need to know. Well, how do you know what you need to know unless you know what they need to know? And you can only get that if you listen. But it's very difficult. Catch yourself the next time you're with someone who doesn't understand what you do, and listen to yourself and see if you don't end up talking sort of first, and that you try to impart what they should know. It happens all the time. I have to catch myself sometimes doing it. Just take a deep breath and always start a meeting by saying, well, why don't you tell me what's important to you, or what you need, or why did you invite me here? I know that you want me to make a presentation on our credentials, and that's fine, but could you just give me just 5-minute background? One, they feel great that they get to talk. One, they feel great because they actually think you might care about what they have to say. And then you know what? It's a little marketing trick, marketing 101. If you listen, if you really truly listen, and you're good on your feet, then your presentation is about to change, because you don't know what you're going to hear before you get in there. And you will have prepared, but you will hear something that clicks that you ought to change in that presentation you're about to deliver, to make sure that somehow you deliver back a message about what it is that's important to that person. And by doing so, you do two things. One, the person has realized that you have given them enough respect to actually listen to what they just told you. Number two, that you actually care about what they told you. And then number three, you actually are pretty smart and capable of changing their presentation right on the fly because you didn't know what they were going to tell you before you walked in the room. You are 90% already there and getting the job. So just a little hint on the communication. And of course, written communication is also extremely, extremely important. A leader always needs to know with the individuals that are working with the team all of their capabilities. And the leader needs to recognize that an effective team will have effective communication all the way across the board. You could win by giving a great speech, but if someone then says, could you put that in writing? And if you can't communicate the same concepts simply, you may also lose the job despite how good the delivery was. One thing that drives me crazy, and why you didn't see death by PowerPoint tonight, which is what I call it, especially at night meetings, is that when a speaker gets up to a platform and reads their speech, I think it's such a waste of time. I'm an intelligent person. I can read a speech, and probably faster than you can deliver it. That doesn't mean I don't like having a written speech that someone hands me. But what I want to hear is the person. What made that person be so successful in what they have written and published and done? What can you give me over and above the written word that you have prepared? Another little tip that I will hope that you would take home with you tonight and any time that you give a presentation is to remember that anyone can read what you're reading. What they come to hear is your experiences and what you can bring to them from what you have learned. So the last thing, of course, through all of that, and then I'll give you some very, very brief tips through some writings that I have done, is confidence. I think so often that people are so intimidated by others that they perceive to have power, or for others that they perceive must be smarter than they are for some reason, or perceive that they hold something over them that they're either going to lose their job, or they're not going to get promoted, or they're not going to get the job as a client, or something. They fear they're going to lose something if they speak out. As a good leader, I will pick that up the moment you walk into the room. And here's how I do that. I can pretty much guess whether a person knows what they're talking about in the first 2 minutes if that person cannot tell me what they want to tell me and look me in the eye at the same time they tell me. A person who is sort of white lying, or a person who doesn't maybe really know, or a person who thinks they know but are unsure that they really know, or feel intimidated by the person that they think probably does know more than they do, and so therefore they're afraid of how they're going to say it, will never look you directly in the eye. They will look down, they will look off, they will look away, they might glance at you, but they don't want to look you in the eye because you can pretty much tell if a person is telling the truth if you can look them right in the eye. Second thing, people who fidget, people who do this with their hands, and people who sweat, and people who play with their hair and twirl it, or, sorry, but, I'm sure that doesn't look good on the video. Those are people who are nervous. And people who are nervous also lack confidence, because you should never be nervous about people like, how do you get up and talk in front of a group of people? Well, because, if you walk out of here and don't like what I have to say, well, that's okay. I'm still going to have a nice dinner and a glass of wine. You can take home what you like, you know, it's not my problem, sorry, but you know, but it sort of is my problem. But if you're confident in what you can do, and you're confident in yourself and your abilities, you can do anything, anything. I have never been worried if I lost my job. Because you know what? I have enough capabilities to do, not maybe anything, but I mean, I think that I could be capable of going down and packing groceries in a bag. I mean, I could do that. I think I could actually probably get a marketing job. Here's a concept I've sold my entire life, but I've actually never been in a marketing job, but yet I market every day. So there are things that I can do, and I'm confident, so I don't worry about my job. What I worry about is my own personal integrity and my credibility. Those are the two things that I hold closest to my heart. And if I don't have enough credibility, then I will fail somebody. Don't do something that you're not capable of doing. It's a bad idea. And if I don't have my own ethics and my own moral standards, I'm also fooling myself. When anyone asks me a question and I give them an answer, they're pretty much guaranteed I'm going to tell them the truth. I may not win a lot of friends. I may not get a lot of jobs. I may not please everybody all the time. And you know what? That's okay, because you will never please all the people all the time. Look at politics for the last thousands of years. You never can please everybody. And why is that? Because one of the aspects, very important, is diversity. And one of the things that I bring all that confidence, and I bring everything that I have learned here, and I look out in this crowd tonight, which is another reason I love coming to New York. Because New York is one of the most diverse cities in the whole world. And no kidding, and I've been to a lot of places all over the world, so I can honestly say that. In fact, last night when I was in my hotel, there were 4 different languages being spoke by the time I walked into the door and got into my room. And I looked at the person next to me and I said, I am in the United States, aren't I? Because I hadn't heard one word of English from the time I entered the hotel till I got to my room. But that is the beauty of where we are. Because a diverse team will always give you a better result than a homogeneous team. And in fact, by getting my doctorate in Japan, this was a very interesting learning exercise for my fellow Japanese clients and associates. Japan is truly the last homogeneous country left. They don't allow immigration. They are very, very strict. I mean, there's no intermarital types of things. I mean, they're very, very steadfast on wanting to be, quote, a total homogeneous country. However, Japan is beginning to fail tremendously. The economy is having major problems. They are having major problems. Toyota, well, I go to Japan quite a bit. I've worked in Japan since the early 80s. I spent a lot of time there. And when I was there earlier, and I guess I was there earlier this year, when I was over there, I said, so explain to me what really happened at Toyota. Now, this is another interesting leadership lesson. Toyota, as you remember, used to be the world leader on quality. That is what Toyota was known for, was quality. And they created all of the sigmas and whatever we have in management school that I probably not kept up with now. On all these certifications and everything, they were the best. But what happened? The Japan economy starts going down. They're trying to turn out cars. Quick, quick, quick. They don't have enough people. They're losing resources. So what do? They outsource most of the parts now going into those cars
to 3 different country areas. Nobody has now the quality check that Toyota was known for internally. And when they all got put together, there was an assumption it would all just work perfectly. But no one spent the final quality check. Toyota may or may not ever recover from this. They've lost face in Japan, and losing face is the worst thing that could happen if you are a Japanese. Why? Because they have lost the trust of the Japanese people in their own country. Everyone I talk to, I mean, it is a major discussion at the universities right now. Don't ever do what they just did. So I mean, there are lawsuits. You don't hear about them, of course, because they're, sort of under the table. But there are major lawsuits going on with Japanese people who have been in the very same accidents that people have been here in the States with these cars. And so that trust, it all centers back to, again, what you as a leader have to live up to. And so in sort of wrapping up a little bit of the pathway to success, one of the things that I did, and I try not to concentrate on engineering tonight since there are a lot of other people in the room than just engineers. But my doctoral dissertation was on engineering education reform and what engineers were missing as skill sets to become leaders. Because we have cut back the curriculum in the engineering schools from 140 some odd credit hours back, I think, in the 1920s to 134 when I went to school to now 124 credit hours under ABET. Now, you don't have to be a rocket science to know if you cut that many credit hours out, you have probably cut out some things that are non-technical, which is the engineering world thought, well, that'll be just fine because no one needs to know any of that stuff anyway. We just need to teach them how to be engineers. And the problem with that, if we continue on this road, is that the engineering profession will no longer be a profession. It will be technologists, and that's all they will be, and we will be commodities. And I'm really, really, really passionate about this subject. So from my doctoral research, I decided to write this little book called The 21st-Century Engineer. And what I tried to do in this very little simple read was, what are the skill sets that I think an engineer ought to have? But I will broaden that because, you know what? I think anyone who wants to be a successful leader today should have this. You need to understand globalization. We are in a global economy, whether you like it or not, and we are intertwined. There is not a major project in the world today that is all done 100% by one company or one nation. Your parts, your material, your labor, things come from different parts of the world to make this world go around today. Number 2, you need to understand a little bit about public policy. I always tell the engineering world, if we had a few more engineers in Congress, we might actually be able to solve the infrastructure problem in the United States today. But the fact, I think we got one yesterday, I have to go back and check, but I think we have a senator who might be an engineer now. We have one close, a physicist in the House, Rush Holt, who I'm a very good friend with. But that's it. We don't have any more. No wonder no one understands that our infrastructure is falling down. How many more bridges will it take to collapse before we actually get it? We need to understand project management. Everything we do, I don't care what industry you're in, you need to know how to plan, you need to know how to schedule it, you need to know about budgets, and you need to know about finances. I mean, it's just simple. That's what makes things go from point A to point B, yet we don't teach it in engineering school and a lot of other industries. You need to know about dispute resolution. Why? Because you know what? Life doesn't always just go the way we always assume. Things go wrong. And leaders need to resolve conflict. It doesn't need to be a claim or a lawsuit, but you will have conflicts. You will have conflicts amongst employers. You'll have conflicts amongst the employees. You'll have conflicts amongst clients. I mean, you need to understand how to deal with conflict and how to resolve it. But we don't teach anything about dispute resolution in our classes. We need to understand about risk management. What are my options? What are my options? What is a higher risk? What has a high risk and a high probability of a really bad consequence if that risk emerges. What risk can I insure? What risk can I self-insure? What risk can I transfer to another party through a contract? We don't teach about risk management, yet it's a very essence of what we do. We need to understand about leadership itself. What is a leader? I do not believe that leaders are self-born. To use a Kentucky phrase, but hogwash, that's all hogwash. Leaders can be trained and leaders can be built. But you need to give people the skills to become a leader. And we don't do that. We need to teach more about ethics and professionalism. And we don't do that. I wear a ring on my little finger of my working hand. This is called the Order of the Engineer. I had it placed on my finger in 1978 when I graduated from Purdue and went through the Order of the Engineer ceremony. And every time I raise my hand to do anything, I am reminded of my moral and ethical obligation as an engineer to protect the public health, safety, and welfare. If a doctor makes a mistake on the operating table, he will kill one person. If an engineer makes a mistake on the drawing, that person has the potential to kill hundreds. It is a life-death profession, and we never teach our engineers how critical that profession is to what everyone takes for granted in this country that is built by engineers. Ethics. We don't talk about the importance of ethics and the importance of how, this is your confidence again, how you must stand up for what you believe in. I give a really good example. Everyone remembers that fateful Challenger day. And there was one engineer that spoke out and said, "Excuse me, I don't think that the shuttle should go up today because it's too cold, and if it fails, it has a probability of failing." And here's where the interesting aspect came down. The vice president looked at that engineer and says, "Can you tell me there's a 100% probability that that is going to fail?" And the answer should have been, does it matter if it's even 1% probability? Because the consequences would be catastrophic. And so does it really matter if it's 1% or 100%? And he made all of those people sign, all those engineers sign off saying that shuttle was okay to go up. That engineer that raised it did not sign it. He lost his job and became the whistleblower that, of course, blew this whole thing open. But the ethical moral is, if you truly, truly do not believe in why something should be done, think about the greater good of the consequence of the decision versus your own individual position. A true leader will never let politics or peer pressure ever, ever take a higher road than their own personal moral ethics and integrity. And so if I leave you with nothing else here tonight, I want you to think about that you actually can chart your own career. And it doesn't matter if you're sitting in this room, if you're 16, 17, 30, 40, 70. My mother's 77 and she's still flitting around the world and having a wonderful time. I got a text message from her from a internet cafe today somewhere in Florence, Italy. She's on a plutonic trip with a man, and my mother sends me this email and she goes, "Well, I'm having a good time, except it's just really difficult with Joe because he likes to turn on the TV every night and keep it on till 11 o'clock. Thanks, Mom. But I'm really happy that she is having a fun time. Because if you don't enjoy what you do, you need to do something else. Life is too short to not enjoy life and what you do. So I also would encourage you, if you're sitting here tonight and I'm boring you, you should have got up and left an hour ago. And if you do like what I have to say, then go out of here and make sure that you are the very best at what you do and that you enjoy every minute of it. And the rest of your life will be what you decide to make of it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Galloway. We will take a few questions.
Absolutely. Any questions? Yes? You know, I can't see a thing with that light in here, but... Oh, come on, try me out for size. Here we go.
My name is Mady Erickson. I just have a question. Working around the world, how's your experience as a woman working in all different cultures? I know some are not as forward-thinking or there yet, having a woman as a leader. How does that work, especially in engineering?
Well, that's an interesting question that you brought that up, because when I was this young new executive in 1984, after I had my M.B.A. from NYIT, and I was offered the opportunity to become a vice president, of course, I went to the board and thought, now I'm on the board, right? Wow. So I was allowed to make a plan. So I said, I think that we should try to make 30% of our business international in the next 5 years. Now, I was, I think, 26 at the time. I can still remember one of our outside board directors. He was the retired chairman of Booz Allen. And he looked at the rest of the board and looked at our chairman, and he said, because I had also suggested we start in Japan as an engineer. And he goes, let me get this right. You're going to send a woman, a young woman, a blonde woman to Japan to conquer the world. He goes, you're crazy. I did it in 2 years. It all boils down to confidence. If I have something that will make you better, it actually doesn't matter what I look like, how old I am, what color I am, or what gender I am. If I deliver value to you, and you can reap the benefits of that value, you will continue to come back to get more of that. And that's what I research my clients to death before I ever enter the room. And of course, in Japan, they weren't clients at that time, they were potential clients. And so I had to get in the door. And this is where you have to now learn cultures, right? Japanese women typically are not allowed into a meeting room, and they really aren't allowed on business dinners with their husband executives. It just doesn't happen, still to this day. However, I am blonde, and there seems to be this fascination of taking pictures with blonde American women. You know, it's a culture thing. I mean, it is. So I could easily get to dinner. I knew if I could get to dinner, I could sell them on something. And that's how I did it. Because they then listened. After they have some sake and a beer and a whiskey, they listen really well. And you just don't drink as much. I mean, there's all tricks of the trade. Go to Russia, they vodka, it's a toast to the vodka. You just make sure that you've got the water on the side so that you're filling your glass up with water and not vodka. It works perfectly. But that's part of the lessons learned. And also, though, more seriously, do learn the culture. There's a book out there called Kiss, Bow, and Shake Hands. It is a wonderful book. If you ever want to work internationally, I highly encourage you to purchase it. There is a gentleman who has researched to death the business ethics and culture of working in other countries. And he will tell you from everything of how to hand your business card, how to present your business card, whether to shake hands, whether to bow, how much to bow, what degree. It depends on an Asian country. They're not all the same percentage of bowings. I know that's very strange, but it's very, very important to know that. And what to eat, what not to eat, whether to give a gift, whether not to give a gift, whether to accept a gift. I mean, it just goes down. You know, it seems crazy, but you would not believe how important it is. And also a little trick I also would tell you. If you go to a foreign country, make sure that you know about 5 words in their language. You know, hello, please, you look very nice, or, you know, you're very handsome. I mean, if you're a woman and you've got a male client, you might say, oh, you look very handsome, or very, you know, pick a word. But if you learn those phrases in that language, even though you know nothing else, your respect will go up tremendously that you took the time to learn something they know was difficult for you and to try it. And that's also something I've also tried to do very, very successfully in all of my international work, and something that has worked really very well. So if you take those things away, I think you can just go kill them dead. Yes?
Hi, my name is Kyle, and I'm another civil engineer. I'm curious about the students' reaction to the education reform that you're talking about.
Well, you know, this is where I've got enough confidence that I'm going to tell you exactly how I feel about the engineering profession. It's not a 4-year degree. We are the only profession that doesn't have to go back and get another degree to do what we do. A law degree is a second degree. The medical field has to go do residency, and they have to have additional education. Accountants need to have additional education. We graduate in 4 years. In fact, we don't even want to take the PE license. I hear people tell me, well, I don't have to stamp the drawing. Why do I need a license? Because you're a professional, and that's what we do. I get even more annoyed when a university professor tells me, well, I don't want to take the test because what if I fail it? What if you fail it? You're teaching kids engineering. I hope you could pass the test. I mean, it just doesn't make any logical sense to me. So my engineering reform book says that there should be a second degree, basically called professional engineering management. It's not an M.B.A. It's not a management degree. And I actually don't care whether universities do this in a 5-year vehicle or whether they have a second degree for it. But I just think that the universities have to teach all those subjects I just talked about. If an engineer doesn't understand those 9 basic soft skills, I just don't think they're ever going to be successful in leadership. They're just not.
Here's more about the students' reaction. Are they willing to do the extra work for it?
Those that are in the officerships of professional organizations agree with me. Those that do nothing but attend class don't agree with me. And that tells me a lot about them. They need to be a technologist, in my view, because professionals will always work more than a 40-hour week. Leaders don't do 40-hour weeks. Just doesn't happen. It can't happen. There's just too much going on out there to do a 40-hour week. So I say, let's have an engineering technology degree, and those that only want to be, quote, civil engineers that only want to do civil engineering, go for it. Those that want to be a professional, you're just going to have to take more education and you're going to have to get a license. And that's the way it ought to be. And it's not just me speaking. The ASCE has been going with their body of knowledge for probably the last 20 years. It is getting credit now, and we have the national licensing boards are actually accepting it. It will be implemented, I think, by 2015, that if you don't have an additional 32 credit hours, you will not be able to even sit for the professional engineering exam. And we have others that are now, some of the employers of engineers are saying, if you don't have these additional credit hours and some of these other skill sets, we're not interested in hiring you. So I think the proof's in the pudding. The industry has spoken out, and that's just the way I feel about it. And so I have students that either love me or they hate me. There really isn't a middle ground. Yes, sir.
Dr. Galloway, I'm Joe Fortini. Thank you very much for your presentation this evening. I just have one question.
Yes, sir.
The elections aside, I've read in the paper, and I'm sure you're aware of the bullet train project in China, the high-speed rail system that they just finished.
Yes.
Now, you spoke of infrastructure and the crumbling of our infrastructure. The Chinese spent $70 billion on defense for their entire country last year. We spent over $600 billion. If you could tell the Obama administration one thing about how they could turn this infrastructure problem around, what would it be?
Well, first of all, though, is the expert witness coming out in me? Your premise I cannot agree with, because the government of China is not a democracy. And you can do anything in a country that's not a democracy a whole lot differently than you can do in a democracy. They built Shanghai in 10 years, an entire city in 10 years. They built the Three Gorges Dam, which people said couldn't be done. But they moved 1 million people. Do you think what it would be like if someone came into New York and said, you know what? I think I'm going to put a dam here. It seems like a good place. And all of you in New York are just going to have to move. Do you think that'd go down well in our country? Probably not. So the premise is a little off. We can't make a comparison there. And they have their own infrastructure problems. I do work in China, and so, there's not a country on this planet that doesn't need help as far as infrastructure, to be very honest. But the administration, any administration, because you know what, when I was president of ASC, it was a Republican administration. So it doesn't really matter if it's Republican or Democrat, because I've been facing this problem in the United States for the last 30 years that I've been a professional engineer. Because they don't understand the importance of infrastructure to make our society operate, there's not an impetus to try to do something about it. Everyone takes infrastructure for granted. When you drive across a bridge, you don't think it's going to fall down. They don't understand design lives, and our infrastructure in this country is well beyond its design lives. Now, infrastructure costs money, and we all know that. And so we as a nation, in my view, are going to have to sacrifice. I am not in favor of increased taxes. I'll just tell you that. I mean, I won't say where my political bent is, but I'm not in favor of increasing taxes, because I don't think that that is the answer. If you have a checkbook, this is what I like to explain it to somebody. If you have a checkbook and you have $100 in it, and you have a car to fix to get you from point A to B, and you've got a lot of other things you'd like to do too. You'd like to eat out, you'd like to go to the movie, you got to buy food. I mean, you have a number of things you have to do, but you only have $100. Now, you have to get from point A to B. Our infrastructure gets us from point A to B. That means you have to cut something somewhere. You can't just go out and make more money. I just left the news. Our government is going to print more money. Now, there's a novel concept. What is that going to do? We are about to hit a major, major brick wall here if we are not careful. So what we have to do, and what any administration is, I don't care if it's a Republican administration or if it's a Democratic administration, we have got to learn to balance our checkbook. And until we know how to do that, we don't have a prayer of answering our infrastructure problem in this country. It's my political speech for tonight.
Hi, Mr. Galloway. My name is Xiang Jing, and I'm from China. Actually, nowadays, many engineers is now starting on M.B.A. and after they're graduated, they just choose another field such as engineering consulting or finance or some other more sounds attractive fields to begin their new career. And I want to know, did you ever hesitate on such problems when you finish your MBA courses? And I hope that my poor English doesn't make you feel unhappy.
Oh, no, not at all. No, I understand completely. You know, when I graduated with my MBA, I mean, I'm in the consulting field. So I don't do design, but I know about design. And I don't really quote, engineer anything is the way that people probably define engineering. Yet in my view, I engineer the way people do business every single day. And so I've taken my engineering skills, which has taught me how to think, how to solve problems, how to critically think, and how to lay out assumptions before I embark upon a solution. That is the same criteria that actually a business person should do as well. And so I look at my MBA as I'm still in the engineering world, but what I do now is provide strategic advice to senior management and to boards as to how to, quote, engineering their decision-making process so that it's reasonable and prudent, so that they can either go to their shareholders to tell them that the money that they are investing is of value, or if they're a public, like for instance, regulated utility, they can go to their ratepayer and say, you're getting value for the money that you are paying in your electric bill by the infrastructure I'm returning to you in electricity. That's what I do. But my MBA taught me how to deliver that message because I now understand about finances. I now understand about accounting. You know, they're not the same. Despite people that tell me they're the same, they're not the same. Accounting is easy. Debits, credits. Financial goes in a whole other way of life, of actually understanding markets and economies and how to actually deal with all of those dimensions that go on in a financial world. The MBA allowed me to think in a different way. It allowed me to have skill sets about behavioral methods of employees, organizations, and how organizations can be structured differently depending on the desired result of the product, whether it's a service or it's a manufactured product. The selling and the marketing and what motivates people to buy things. You know, they don't teach you any of those in engineering school. So you have a great opportunity as an engineer in an MBA because you could go completely into the marketing field for an engineered product and would be able to do it very well because you understand the engineering behind it, but now you can sell it. Or you can go back into the engineering world and use those management skills to make your company better and to sell its products, yet still be an engineer. So you have opportunities that I think that you have options and you can choose one or the other because now you have a skill set that allows you to be a leader in either field or any field. An engineer should never think that they're limited to engineering. Arthur Andersen, before it went under in the Enron incident, was the largest employer of engineers in the world. They didn't hire engineers to be engineers. They actually hired them to be financial analysts because they were taught to critically think. And that's what they wanted their financial analysts to do and to understand the markets of engineering and construction companies that at that time, if you remember in that time period that you had the whole Enron and Arthur Andersen deal, you had major infrastructure projects being built all around the world. And the investment community needed to understand what were the pros and the cons of investing in certain companies and products and what their decision-making process was, and that's why they wanted engineers to come into the financial area.
My name is Yan, MBA student at NYIT. I just want to say thank you very much for your experience sharing with us. Really great. And also I got one question that is, many great leaders, I mean, before they success, they did a lot of crazy things.
Really?
Some they might regret, and some they might like learn lessons from and got them into success. And do you mind sharing any of your crazy?
Sure, absolutely. I'll give you a personal note. Unfortunately, I was married and got divorced once. And you might say, why is she talking about that? Because I'll never have a joint bank account with anyone ever again. Great lesson learned from that experience. I'll tell you an experience as a young engineer going into my workforce. I believed I needed to be somebody who I was not. I bought Dress for Success. And I came in every day in my little bow tie and my little suit that I felt very uncomfortable in, and wore my hair back in this bun, and it wasn't me. It wasn't me at all. They were all blue pinstripes or gray. I mean, because those were the only two colors that, accountants wore, so, or lawyers. So I tried to do that. Your tie's okay, Mr. President, looks great. But because I did not feel comfortable in the clothes that I was wearing, that transcended into my meetings with other people, because I didn't feel comfortable and they could sense it, they could feel it. And I lost some jobs and I lost opportunities even within my own firm because they didn't believe I had the confidence to go into a meeting with major clients. So I decided, I don't remember how I learned this or who taught it to me or whatever. It's just that one day I showed up in a bright red suit. And everybody just went, whoa. And everyone kept staring at me, and I'm like, I just got a red suit on, guys. Is that okay? They're like, oh, if you're okay with it, we're okay with it. And then someday, about 2 weeks later, one of the other lady engineers, she came in a purple suit. And I said, well, I bet you like purple. And she goes, I do, but I was really nervous to wear it until you came in that red suit. And you know what? From that point forward, I became who I am. I'm a blonde that has long hair that likes to dress up, and I like to dress down. But I like to dress to where I'm going to be for the occasion I'm going to be in. And when I have to work late at night, I don't do very well with the noose around my neck and my hair pulled back tight and shoes that are killing my feet. I just not very productive in that kind of attire. So the first thing that I did when I became CEO of my company is I abolished the dress code, completely abolished it. I said, now, don't come in here in ragged jeans, and don't come in here with a tank top on, and don't come in with flip-flops on. But I want you to be comfortable knowing where you're going to be. My productivity went up almost 30% in 6 months. I couldn't even get rid of the people at night because they loved what they did. So I have to, of course, now here's the con of being the leader, okay? There's pros and cons. So the con, a true leader on a project team is always the last to leave. Always the last to leave. And so when your team is really excited about a project to get it done and they're sitting there until 1 o'clock in the morning, you're going, okay, now guys, you really can go home anytime. But that is the power of letting people be what they want to be and be comfortable, because they will return for you as a leader more than you can possibly imagine. When you dictate to people what they have to do is when you're not really a leader anymore. You become a dictator. And there's a big difference. So.
Hi, nice to see you again, Dr.
Thank
Galloway.
you.
Here I have a question about the management of human resource. When all of us know the people who working in the consulting company are very talented, it's very hard to control maybe. So as a leader in a consulting company, how you bring them together to work hard, and how you make sure they won't do anything to impair the company and company's benefit, maybe steal the clients for themselves or something.
You know, I'm never going to tell you that I have been in a perfect world. And people are humans. And humans are going to do what humans sometimes do. And that is, as I talked about that trust element, I have a personal story I will tell you. You asked me about something I've learned lessons from and regrets. So I will tell you a personal story that goes to your question. one of my very best friends from college, that I was very, very close with, I pulled into the company when I was an executive and allowed her the opportunity to also run one of the offices. And she rose through the company and she became an executive as well. But she wasn't an owner of the company. She was an executive, and I basically allowed her, I was the chairman, the CEO, I allowed her free rein, basically to do whatever she wanted to do, within, obviously, budgets and reasons. But I never dictated to her how she had to run her office, how she had to run her business. But there was always people should be allowed to do with their own bonuses and salary, whatever they want to do with it. And you know what, I was telling some people at lunch today, I was never as wise as my mother, who always put 20% of her salary away with every paycheck from the day she began working on a teacher's salary in the state of Kentucky. She put 20% of her paycheck in investments. At age 60, she retired and has never worked a day since and clips coupons. She travels around the world, has no debts, bought a new home, bought a new car, and she looks at me and goes, "What did I fail to teach you?" So with my friend, what she perceived was incorrect, because I now finally have my first savings account as of 2 years ago. When we sold the company, I put the money away, and then, oh my gosh, wow, I started looking at the interest on a monthly basis going, I could live off of the interest. What a novel concept. But I wasn't that wise in my career, and so I literally spend the money as it comes in. Because I'm so confident I could do anything, why not? I never had any money growing up. I had no money growing up. And so to me, when I got my first job and my first paycheck and the freedom to do with that whatever I wanted to do with it, I was so excited. And so that's the way I've lived my life. So of course I buy Porsches, I bought nice cars, bought nice clothes, but my associate viewed that in her mind as being greedy, pandering, and frivolous. And so she did attempt on the sly to take away my entire Asian clientele. She and another person from the firm actually set up a company on the side and were slowly trying to turn clients over. Now, your true friends in life, and believe me, the construction industry where I work is a really small environment, really, really small. They're really, really good people out there. I can probably count on about 2 hands and 2 feet, and that's it. And when people start doing things like that, it doesn't take long for true friends to tell you that. And there's a really good book that I like that I also would encourage you. I'm into giving people books that I really enjoy. It's a book called Sun Tzu, Art of War. It is an excellent read because it's all about strategy and knowing your enemy. It's not about crushing your enemy. It's about knowing the intelligence of your enemy so that you can win by being just a little bit smarter. So I let her go. She thought I didn't know. In the meantime, I was calling these clients back, and I was flying to Japan, I was flying to Singapore, I was flying to Malaysia, I was meeting with them in the back doors. And when she resigned, I said, that's fine. And I slapped on her table a $1 million lawsuit. And she goes, how can you do this to me? And I'm like, how can I do this to you? So the trust is a very important thing. And the one thing that I learned from that exercise is that no matter how much you think that somebody is truly your friend, people react differently in different situations. Never, ever, ever allow your clients to slowly walk away from you without being in front of your clients all the time. If I had spent more time and not just assuming that I could just totally get rid of the Asian clientele and turn it over to somebody without still doing what I call client maintenance and making regular visits, I could have corrected this long before it ever happened. So I learned a very important lesson there, is to always be on the top of your game as a leader and make sure you know where all your chess players are and what they're doing. So that would be my response to you on that.
Question. Last question.
I'm absolutely thrilled to see you here.
My own professor.
And you are a true American success story. No question about it.
Thank you, Mr. Hartman. Yes, I must tell you that Professor Hartman back there was my professor at NYIT in my M.B.A. program.
And you were a damn good student.
And I can't tell you how touching it is for me to be up here on this stage and to hear you say that. It means quite a bit to me as well. So thank you very much for coming.
Yes, I just have one question for you. You can't get away free.
Okay.
You were one of my earlier students, obviously. When you look back on, taking the degree here at NYIT, the M.B.A., what is your general feeling about the program? Did you,
Well, I've been asked that question a lot today, both in interviews and tapes and students, and why did you choose NYIT and what did you take away from it? Well, I have to tell you there were several factors that actually entered my equation, and I'm happy to share them. I lived in Princeton, New Jersey. Actually, I lived in Hopewell, but when I say that, people are like, where's Hopewell, New Jersey? So I lived in Princeton, New Jersey, close enough for people to understand, halfway between New York and Philadelphia, put a dot in the middle. And I worked in Manhattan, but I traveled internationally, as you've sort of heard. And I knew I needed an MBA, and because I wanted to be the CEO of the company. I did. I knew I could do it if I had the skill sets, and I knew I didn't have the skill sets, so I knew I had to get some management skills to succeed. Then I had a dilemma because I was rising in my company as a rising star, working hard, more than those 40 hours. And I couldn't figure out how I could do that and not quit, because I knew if I quit, I was dead in the water for several years. I knew if I went to my boss and said, I really can't do those international trips because I got to go to night school. Most people think that your employer would be very happy you're getting a second degree. Well, not if you're doing very successful on the road and what you're doing. They don't want to lose that. So I couldn't do that. So that means I needed an executive MBA. And I started looking. And and within the radius, there's a lot. There's the Wharton School, there's Drexel, there's Columbia. But what attracted me initially about NYIT is that I could do it just on Saturdays. Little short drive, Princeton to Old Westbury. Old dark 30 in the morning to get there for an 8 o'clock class. No traffic on a Saturday night back from Old Westbury to Princeton. Of course, if you're in a Porsche, it does a little help, turn up the music and So I knew that that attracted me. But that wasn't the only reason, because there was one other school that also did that. It came down to two schools, and I won't tell you who the other school was, but the difference between, and much, quote, one might try to think on the scale of things, a much better prestigious school name. However, that great prestigious school name had no practitioners in its executive MBA program. I was a working professional. I wanted to hear how other executives were successful at what they did. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to learn from their experience. And NYIT offered that blend of practitioners and full-time professors. That was the turning point of why I selected NYIT. And why still to this day I think that I got one of the best management degrees I could have gotten, because I really took real life experiences and have applied them to my own real life experiences. And I think that was extremely valuable. And for that, thank you, Mr. President. You have a great school. Okay, are we all ready? ready? This is one of those tests. If you're not here and I pull your number, you don't win. Oh! Oh my gosh. 3 of my books. Imagine that. I might even sign them. Okay, ready? First one. Ticket number 326480. Oh my God. Come up later and I will sign. Okay. Yes. So you still have to stick around. Okay. I don't know why it makes any difference if I look at them. I have no idea whose number these are. Okay. 326498. Stay later, and I will sign it. Okay. All right. 326588. Ooh, someone in the back. Good. Don't leave. Okay. Now I have the iPad shuffle. I feel like I'm at bingo, you know. A2. Sorry. Is bingo a word that you young people understand? You know, you play that when you get old. Okay. I still play it, actually. 326505. Whoa. Hey. And what else do we have? And another iPod shuffle. Okay, last one. Karnak, let's see. 326506. Oh, congratulations. Well, thank you very much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. It was a pleasure. Thank you.